Hello everyone, it's Silver. This time we have something a little bit different for this series because the first game I'm going to cover in this is not technically a Bullet Heaven or Survivor's Like or whatever you want to call them style of game, but it is sort of adjacent to that style and also just sort of a small form game in general, so I thought that this would be the best way to cover it anyway. And this is, of course, Necrosmith 2. So the first Necrosmith was a very small but quite successful game that was basically like a sort of necromancer land-conquering simulator, more or less. And it was quite cute. It had a really nice visual style to it and some pretty enjoyable sort of auto-battler-like gameplay. And they decided to basically take that concept and expand it in every direction to make a sequel. So the way that it works is when you start a run, you will have your tower in the middle of the map, and most of the map will be blacked out. It'll be in the fog of war. You can't see what's there yet. And you'll have this sort of pentagram on the side of the screen there that lets you construct various undead minions to do your bidding. And you'll start out with just a couple of basic body parts, some arms and legs, a rib cage, and a head, just to make some basic skeletal minions to get things started. There are also a list of different orders at the top of that pentagram window there that tell the AI what to do, what you specifically want them to do. And this is only the starting order. You can click on them and change it at any time later if you want to. And you'll want to start off with the explore, the sort of resource collection order at first. This will cause them to simply explore around the map, revealing the fog of war, fighting off enemies that they find, but not actively going after them on purpose, rather just sort of defending themselves, and trying to collect various resources, because you'll need all these resources to actually construct your army. And then once you get some more advanced parts and stuff going on, you can use some of the other orders, like ones that make them wander around and attack enemies directly rather than simply defending themselves, actually going after groups of enemies on purpose. Or ones that destroy layers, because as your explorers are exploring the map, they'll uncover layers. And this game has a day-night cycle, and during the day, layers will spawn enemies that all march towards your tower to try and destroy it. Which is very rude of them, really, but you can also have an order that causes your minions to protect a specific area of the map, or indeed to stay at your tower and protect it directly. So there's quite a lot of different orders you can give to make sure that your army of minions is sort of working efficiently. You'll always want some people defending, some people exploring, some people actively going and trying to break up layers and all sorts of stuff like that. So you want a good variety of different minions on the map to be able to actually keep up, because as the day-night cycles wear on, you'll find that layers get more and more revealed, and more advanced layers get revealed, and it'll start spawning a large number of enemies, and you've got to really keep up with it. And among all the various things you can find while you're exploring, you can find stuff like libraries, which will give you blueprints. You can build buildings on your tower. The cool thing is it actually reflects the buildings that you make, so your tower will change in appearance depending on what you've found and built. And these buildings will cost this resource, the stone resource that you will get from exploring. And these buildings have a lot of different uses, from giving certain types of body parts different benefits, like, say, making all magical type body parts add regeneration to the minions so that they regenerate health, adding a bunch of extra speed to minions that are made with bone parts so that you can have an army of cheap, easily producible skeletons that are very fast and can be sort of like shock troops. You can even also get usually upgrades for each building. Not all buildings have upgrades, but a lot of them do, that have an ascending cost but enhance the effect of whatever the building does. But of course, the main thing you're going to be finding and that you want to find are body parts. And there are different body part slots. There are 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso, and a head slot. And you need all 6 of those slots filled in order to actually craft a minion. You can't have any gaps. And there are a large number of different body parts for you to find, which is definitely the highlight of the game, is just the sheer number of various parts that you can find. And you'll get, of course, bone and flesh parts, as well as some more exotic stuff, depending on where you explore. Some buildings will give you parts every night when night rolls over. Some are just, you find the parts the one time and you get them and use them. So you can have all sorts of stuff, like different kinds of species of skeleton parts, like orc skeleton parts, or you can have like lizard man parts. Those are amphibious, so they actually allow your minions to cross water more quickly, or at all. Minions without that can't go in water. You can find fairy parts that often have some extra magical effects and some spells they can cast, and they're often a little bit less in terms of health, but some of them can fly and stuff. You can find wings. If you have 2 wings, you can fly. Some torsos will have wings attached. Some heads grant various special characteristics or enhance different kinds of held weapons, depending on what head it is. And of course, there are the weapons themselves, from normal just swords and axes to magical tomes and staves, even giant tree trunks if you're like, say, a cyclops. And much later on, some even more exotic parts like fancy high-tech disc things that bounce around, or even basically laser pistols and stuff like that. So you do have a significant amount of variety in terms of the army you can create. And the really cool thing is all of these are physically shown to you. So whenever you craft a minion, it will look like a combination of all the parts you use. It doesn't turn them into like a generic sprite or anything. They do actually look like whatever you made, even if it looks extremely silly. Like having a huge upper body and teeny tiny legs that actually does work, and it looks very funny. There are also hidden recipes that you can find by combining specific parts together. They create a sort of named minion rather than a generic combination of parts. And this minion will have some extra benefits that it shows you whenever you first make it. Usually it'll have like some extra health or extra speed, maybe a cost decrease and various things like that. So there are benefits to finding these, experimenting with parts and trying to make these recipes. And also once you discover a recipe, you can click that recipe again later to automatically make that minion again if you have the requisite parts for it. There are also some spells that you'll gain access to. There is a meta progression system where you get gold by just exploring the map and stuff, and in between runs you can spend gold to upgrade various parts of your necromancer's tower, and these will give you access to special constructions that give you new body parts every night, up to and including stuff like cyber dinosaur parts and stuff. And you can even have a cat. The cat is super adorable. The cat will be summoned up by a spell and go and collect resources for you for a little while. And there are also other spells that you can find, like a meteor storm or a lightning blast or a healing spell and some stuff like that, that allow you to use these powerful effects on cooldowns to help have a more active presence in what's happening on the map. Overall, I think it's actually a pretty solid expansion of the first game. I love the variety in parts and experimenting to find new recipes and stuff. There's also the Titan, by the way, which you have to put a whole bunch of body parts in a cauldron to create, but it's a gigantic creature that you can choose all the parts of just like you can a normal minion. It's just that there's a lot more parts that go into it and a lot of mana. You do need mana to summon things, and you need a ton of it for Titans, but they're super strong, and every certain amount of time you'll see this timer up in the top middle of the screen always ticking down. When that runs out, a boss spawns, and you really ideally want some Titans around to be able to deal with these, because they deal huge damage and can very quickly destroy your tower if you're just using normal minions alone to try and fight it off. I will say that the game can sometimes be a little bit buggy, is my only real criticism of it. I did once have a run where a bunch of my minions got stuck in the tower and the various portals and stuff and couldn't actually move. They were stuck in place. Even my Titan got stuck. And then after that, I waited for the enemy boss to spawn and it got stuck too and couldn't move. So I tried to give up and restart the run, but the game crashed when I did that. Luckily, this has only happened once, so there's still some bugginess to work out. And the other game I wanted to take a look at this time is Scarlet Tower. So this is a game that has a very striking visual style, which is probably the first thing you'll notice about it. It, in terms of, you know, these survivor-like games always look quite simple most of the time, and a lot of that is because you don't want too many layered effects and stuff, because it can get really busy really quickly. So the more effects and things you have playing, the more detailed everything looks, the harder it is to read. And you want a game in this genre to be very readable. You don't want the player losing track of where their character is and stuff like that. So we're all used to this genre looking relatively simple, just as a necessity for how it works with the sheer amount of stuff that can be on screen at any given time. So the fact that this game looks like it does is actually pretty cool. It's got some really nice sprite work, but also some very pretty glowy effects for all of its weapons and attacks and magic and stuff that look really cool. They have a nice amount of sort of glow and maybe even bloom to them, but they don't really obscure the screen or anything like that. So despite the game having this pretty nice presentation, it still looks quite readable. And I haven't found myself losing track of where I am or getting confused as to what I'm looking at or anything like that. So I think they've done a good job of differentiating the game a little bit from its peers by going for this sort of dark, glowy, interesting style. There are several different characters to choose from, and they all have a different starting weapon that is unique to them. And of course, once you're in battle, you can get various other weapons to create your build. This game goes for a pretty cool idea where every weapon is actually also a specialization, and you'll see that name beneath the weapon. So you'll see some of them say like elementalist or priest or necromancer or something like that. And these are sort of the genre of weapon that they are. And this matters because once you have one of those, you get a passive that's unique to that specialization. So like the elementalist has this frostfire effect that allows them to do some crazy stacking damage over time stuff. And getting multiple weapons of that specialization will, I think, empower the ones that you already have. So if you get like several elementalist weapons, that effect will get stronger. And once you do have that specialization, you can also find NPCs of that specialization on the battlefield. So in that case, you'll have some elementalists that spawn that you can sort of rescue, and they will fight alongside you for a while. So this is, I think, a really cool system that helps the game stand out among other bullet heavens because I've never seen anything quite like it. Because what it technically does is drastically increases the build variety of a game like this, because you have all these various sort of tribal passive effects that you can gather in different amounts depending on the weapons that you're wielding. So it's not all about the weapons that you choose. That's still very important, but it's also about what spec those weapons have and what passive effects that gives you as you collect them all. It also does have a weapon evolution system. In this case, it takes 2 weapons. Whenever you pause the game and look at the weapons you have equipped currently, it'll tell you what other weapons they combine with, which is a handy feature. And if you have those weapons together on your character and you have them all at maximum level, then whenever the next chest drops and you get a new chest, it will combine them together into an evolved weapon. And very much like Vampire Survivors, you want evolved weapons as much as you can get them because they're extremely powerful, like significantly more powerful than the unevolved forms. Evolved weapons are also the only way to get multiple specializations in one slot. There are, of course, also passive effects that you can get. You can have a lot more of these than you can the weapons, but you still have a limited number of slots for them. And the passive slots also have the sort of tribal specialization effects, and I think the passives that you can choose from as you level up are based on the specializations that you have from your weapons. So your active weapons affect what passive bonuses appear for you to choose. Another cool thing about the game is that the characters aren't just a starting weapon, but they're also a selection of other things. Every character has an ult. You'll see a sort of orange gauge in the bottom of the screen. It fills up as you kill enemies. And when it's full, you can trigger an ult. And these are usually very strong effects, like full screen clearing effects that often heal you a lot as well. And they're one of the main ways to get reliable healing, so you want to save them for the right times. But also, when you're choosing a character, you can choose a different sort of passive effect that's usually some sort of attack or offensive option that happens automatically, and there are a couple of different ones for each character. And you can also choose a rune, and this rune, usually there are 3 for each character, will alter that effect and their mechanics in some way to sort of create a specialized build. So this means that every character has quite a few different options as to how to play them, which is pretty cool. I think another thing that sets this game apart a little bit is the fact that it has a tremendous amount of progression. There are an absurd number of unlocks that you can find, and there are just so many different ways to unlock things that you'll be getting new stuff all the time. You'll also find that each character, all of those, the ults and the runes and all those effects, they can be upgraded individually, so you can make each character stronger in different ways. You'll find that there are several different currencies, from gold, these sort of red blood gem things, these purple shadow gem dealies, and also kills, which are interesting. Kills count as a resource, but only in run, which is I actually like as a mechanic, because it means that in a lot of games like this, you spend your meta currency, like gold, on in-run shop items as well. So you often don't necessarily want to buy those things in a run unless your run is doing super well, because you want to save that gold for after the run to unlock more stuff. So this game avoids that problem by making the currency that shopkeepers accept the number of kills you have in that run instead, which I like. There's also several other things to use all these currencies for. You can upgrade various aspects of each character, but you can also there's this rune system that takes the different resources to use, and you can slap runes onto different sort of upgrade trees in order to make them more powerful. And there are also the classic gold upgrades that are pretty standard for the genre, like, movement speed, vacuum range, attack speed, all that stuff that you can improve with gold. There are a bunch of those. And there are, of course, various different bosses. The boss fights in this game are pretty involved, actually. Unlike a lot of games in the genre, the bosses do have a whole bunch of different attacks and sometimes phases and stuff, so you have to do a lot of dodging and a little bit like a sort of MMO raid boss kind of influence. And of course there are new areas to unlock with all kinds of new enemies in each one, and those new bosses with their own mechanics and new characters to unlock that of course each have their own weapon and their own sets of upgradable passives, runes, and ults and stuff. So it's definitely a very large game. It feels like a significant amount of content for the price. I mean, it's only $5, and there's easily like 20 to 30 hours of just unlocking stuff here, let alone the actual gameplay of using it all. So it's definitely an easy recommend because it's got some really cool ideas, a super nice style in its presentation, and is also just full of stuff to do. So I'll put the link in the description below this video to the Steam store page for both of these games if you wish to check them out yourselves. They're both nice and cheap and cheerful, so give them a shot. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.